This film is maybe the most artistically unflinching, uncompromising, unashamedly surreal and powerfully evocative tour de force of images and sounds ever committed to the big screen. Also, it fucking sucks. Now, don't get me wrong, I have mad respect for an old man that just wants to burn all of his money. Francis Ford Coppola, director of The Godfather, directed this movie and financed this movie entirely on his own. And that is awesome. He's not going to take it to him to the afterlife, so he's just burning all his money. And he may as well burn all his money making some art. Is that art something that I enjoyed watching on any conceivable level of enjoyment? No. But I got mad respect for the old man for burning the money. Just lighting $120 million on fire to make something that doesn't really feel, in a lot of ways, like a film. I don't really know what it is. It felt unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. A truly special and unique cinematic experience that I detested. I loathed it. I had such an uncomfortable viewing experience. It felt like something I suffered through more than I watched. And I understand film isn't there for me to just enjoy. Like, it doesn't have to be fun. It doesn't have to be a spectacle where I'm loving everything about it. And it wasn't that the subject matter was dark and intense, or it was uncomfortable and I just didn't feel right. It was just like a film that felt like it didn't understand what a film was. This film is a $120 million student film. And I say that phrase in the most derogatory sense possible. Art house film, take that meaning however you want, made by someone who does have something to say about art and politics and the world at large, but has not seen a movie, does not understand film as a concept or as an art form, and is instead trying to do the film equivalent of an art gallery exhibition. If anything can be art and everything is art, then yes, this movie is technically a movie because you string together a selection of different scenes that had sound over them. Lights and colors and sound. I suppose this is now technically a movie. Like how you can put up anything on a wall and say, that is art. Does that make it digestible for human consumption? No. Also, I just want to put a friendly little reminder that this film was directed by the guy who made The Godfather. It's not often in a cinema that almost immediately, as soon as it starts playing, there's just this uncomfortable vibe where everything just feels off. Everything feels wrong. Everything feels uncomfortable in a way that you can't put your finger on properly. It's something that's it's almost untangible. How is this even a real film? I don't know. I absolutely love that something like this exists. It's just so wild and unique and crazy, and there's probably nothing like this. On the flip side, I had to watch it, and I didn't like that experience. The tone is messy and inconsistent, but I guess the whole film is messy and inconsistent, so maybe the tone is exactly what he wanted from Megalopolis. It's very hard to gauge what he wants me to feel, because it is so absolutely incomprehensible. It has no narrative flow or structure in any sense of that word. It makes David Lynch look like he's making standard 22 episode CW TV series. I just don't understand how this was made. I understand how it was made, but I don't understand. There's no notes, and then there's Megalopolis. The visuals are either striking and beautiful and imaginative and interesting, or they are abhorrently disgusting and awful and just blah. And it's there's nothing in between. There's nothing where you're like, oh, that's just a normal shot. Everything is 10 out of 10 or 1 out of 10. I don't know why. It kind of sounds ridiculous. I'm complaining because maybe the visuals are the only thing that I would say as a positive in any way. But I actually found it kind of frustrating. Like every time there was a nice shot, I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. But then we'd cut to another shot and I'm like, oh my God, I hate looking at this movie. And just it jumping back and forth, the inconsistency, the jarring nature of that, I found to be like viscerally upsetting. All of the dialogue felt like budget Shakespearean dialogue where everyone was just dancing and prancing about the screen, saying fake weighty things that had no emotional weight or meaning behind them, that like on a surface level almost sounds like someone saying something profound, but it's very shallow. And that's what I felt like most of the dialogue felt like. It felt very obviously manipulative, where like on a surface level, you'd be like, wow, that's so profound. But then when you just think about it for like half a second, you're like, oh no, that's super shallow. And you're just trying to trick me into thinking you're saying anything of substance or value. Or maybe I'm just an idiot and the entire film's premise went over my head. It didn't. I got it. Despite the fact that I felt like this had no plot. Never heard of her. Saying the word plot or narrative in a review for this movie feels wrong. It doesn't feel right because there wasn't any. But if you were to be incredibly generous, you would say, well, art is good and the guy who wants to build like railroads and like hospitals and like roads, he's bad. So we got Gus Fring, he hates art, and we got bloody Kylo Ren, and he loves art. Also, he can stop time and manipulate it. But that's irrelevant. Don't worry about the time stopping madman over there. Just remember that he loves art. And Gus Fring, he hates art. And that's the whole film. All of the performances and the tone and the vibe of every single actor just felt so off and nothing gelled or fitted. There was no chemistry between anybody. It felt like every single main character was acting in a different movie, but nobody was acting in Megalopolis. But what is Megalopolis? It's not a film. It's nothing. It's just... I don't even know what it is, and in some ways that's super impressive, and it's fun to have a unique experience in the cinema. Because Hollywood, at times it can feel creatively bankrupt, and you can be like, man, films just feel the same. But then you watch a film that's not a film, and you go, well, there is a reason that certain crazy parts of filmmaking, like cause and effect, beginning, middles, and ends, you know, a general 3 to 5 act structure, like things that are just the basic core fundamentals of storytelling, when they are abandoned, it just becomes a 2.5 hour, $120 million student art house film. This film is a relentlessly exhausting slog. This film was so meandering and random, inconsequential, pointless, whilst almost continuously just yelling at you about how important everything you were seeing was. I became so lost in the pretentious, artsy, narratively incomprehensible, incoherent maze of, not plots, I suppose it's just maze of scenes, of sequences that are strung together in some form of technical cohesion because they literally like follow each other, because that's how like editing works. After about an hour, you kind of climatize to the rhythm, or lack thereof of rhythm, but instead of kind of settling in to just whatever Megalopolis is, I just kind of hit like a brick wall at about halfway. The entire second half of the film kind of just washed over me like this fever dream. Like the film felt like this sickness that I was experiencing, and I would see flashes of imagery and colors and sounds, and I was like kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I wasn't really emotionally invested or experiencing it. It was just kind of flooding onto me, and I was just kind of suffering through it, and it felt like something that I was never going to stop experiencing. This never-ending suffering, this never-ending fever dream. But then suddenly, when I was out of the cinema, out of the movie, and I had that fresh air, that fresh night air just hit my skin, I was suddenly just like well again. I suddenly felt better, and then when I look back and think back on the movie, it doesn't even really feel like a thing that truly happened. Like, it doesn't even really feel like something I experienced. It feels like this off nightmare that someone else told me about weeks ago, and I can barely even remember little glimpses. I get a flash here or there, but generally speaking, the fresh night air has rejuvenated me, and I drove home and I forgot that I saw the movie. In conclusion, I didn't like it.